Okay, we're back. First of all, before we move on, I want to thank the two sisters for coming in to give us that report on what happened today in the Fight for 15 and how that struggle is connected to so many other issues if we're going to have the kind of society that we deserve to have. So in this last section today, we are going to talk about a lot of issues related to public transit, which again is another issue that is very connected to other issues in the city. So we have Reggie Davis from the Amalgamated Transit Union and Stanley Smalls. Welcome and thank you for coming.
Thanks for having us.
Reggie in particular, I've been looking forward to having the chance to talk to you ever since the victory in Clayton County of the referendum to bring MARTA there. So could you say a few words about yourself and how you got involved and what happened in Clayton County?
Certainly. Again, I'm Reginald Davis, and I'm with Amalgamated Transit Union, Local 732. Actually, I sit the executive board there for infrastructure as well. I was fortunate in that I'm a resident of Clayton County. I have a local president in Curtis Howard who saw enough in me to place me on this team that started started in Clayton County. And as far as how I got started, about 11 years ago I got started, and I was approached by a coworker of mine named Clarence. He's since retired, and he was like, "We need some help. We need some stewards. We need somebody who could take to the floor and communicate with people well." And he thought that I could do that. Since then, I've taken the baton and run with it. We've had some good battles and fights along the way, but getting back to Clayton County, I would contend that transportation in that county was more of a fundamental right. It was a civil right in many ways for us. Many a day I saw senior residents walking down Tara Boulevard, going down Highway 54, sidewalkless streets, carrying many bags. And then also you had residents who were having to pay outlandish amounts of money for gypsy cabs or whatever, and it just didn't seem fair. When the opportunity came for the commissioners to move and vote for the Clayton County referendum, well, then Labor got active, and we took to the streets and we pushed and understand that it was a collaboration in that we came up with a great recipe for success because everybody worked together, the egos were removed, and everybody took to the streets.
And you had one of the biggest voter turnouts in the state, is that right?
Actually, we won at, what was that, 60, 64, well, no, actually it was 73, 74. It was 74%, which I might add, was greater numbers than the gubernatorial and the Senate race for that election as well.
So more people went down the ballot to vote for transit to Clayton County, came down that far to make sure they voted for that.
And most certainly did. But what that also showed, and what that also showed too, was that people were willing to pay that 1 cent sales tax for dependable transportation. So it's worked. A year and a half later,
yeah, could you say a little bit about before and after? You said a little about before, people walking long distances and having to pay for that private service. How do things look better now in Clayton County in terms of expansion and jobs?
A year and a half later, the unemployment rate, it's actually, we've got more jobs now, okay? And it's largely due to transportation in the county. Actually, as far as our routes, we got like 9 routes. Okay, now we got 7 new routes. And
9 plus 7.
9 plus 7, exactly. And then we got 2 extended routes. And so it's it's just growing and growing. And actually, really, to sum it up, as far as trips, um, we've eclipsed the 3 million mark trip in Clayton County since the referendum passed. So that's telling me that the ridership is growing. The ridership is big. We're growing. The economics of the county is growing. Landscape of it is changing, and not only that, we've got some upcoming matter of fact next year some upcoming opportunities as well for growth really with the airport. There's a couple of jobs with the airport, the air travelers and things like that. So all that's coming in, and that's going to impact the economics of Clayton County.
A ripple effect.
Yes.
So I'm going to shift for a minute, and then I think we'll come back and kind of bring it together.
Mm-hmm.
So you just outlined a positive story about how MARTA grew as a result of the coalition that was built between the union and the community. Now, Stanley, we have another story where MARTA management does not cooperate with the union, and what is the result of that?
Oh man.
And we're talking specifically about the mobility service to the disability community.
I think I should have went first. Go from bad to good.
No, we'll bring it back. We'll bring it back.
Again, thanks for having me again. And it's honestly tragic. You do working people wrong with a dirty agenda, and you're further hurting the taxpayers, but more importantly, our elderly and disabled community. They took an action against MARTA some years ago to get better paratransit service, and in that consent decree, they asked for certain things, and along the way, with big corporations, if you don't have a watchdog group, they tend to not do it. So, from the documents I read, this was no just sit on your hands advocacy group for the disabled community. You didn't do it. They went back to court to ask the judge to enforce it. And MARTA see fit not to enforce it, but to throw it off on a private contractor that doesn't have a great reputation around the country to provide an excellent service to our people and our elderly and disabled community. I'm more so hurtful behind it because it's in the state of Georgia, and the history Georgia have. And I think we could have used this opportunity as being the 9th or the 10th largest transit agency in the world to set a trend. They like to brag about how all the transit agencies outsource their paratransit. Well, I don't think we should follow people. I think we should give other transit agencies the blueprint. And I look at, you get what you pay for. They're hiring people at $10 an hour and then paying them $11.50 once they get out of training. You're not going to get the quality of work that you so desperately, quote unquote, outsource for. You get what you pay for. Paul, you've been around this business very long. You know that's one of the things that paratransit struggled with was pay. And just in 2014, the union took to the street to get better wages for workers, and we were successfully at getting that at contract negotiations. We got the wages bumped up to $12.92 starting and capped out at 15 something, but then they contract out. So,
and could we, just to connect to this other story about benefits, how much worse are benefits now under a private company?
Well, oh man.
If there was a story, I want to make sure this is true, that the new company offered a plan that costs more than what people would make in a month.
Yes, it makes me cringe when I have to hear it because I represent these people, and when you offer a plan that's bigger than what you're gonna make, just off your base of pay, $11.50, and mind I add to this, they don't guarantee your hours, so you don't get a guarantee 80 hours. So you're going to be paying. I know we have seen one plan at $1,000 every 2 weeks. That was their quote unquote Cadillac plan, and it doesn't even begin to give you the stuff you need. With that plan, you couldn't even afford to bring another child in this world because it would be, the debt. You're better off just paying out of pocket yourself because they was going to put the burden of the whole cost on that family.
Don?
I had a question. My question was, in the beginning when all of this, took off and started, MARTA had laid off several of the MARTA mobility drivers. And then they said that the private company would hire them back on, but they would not be allowed to keep their pension. They would hire them back, and then they'd have a benefits plan, but they wouldn't be allowed to keep their pension.
It was more of a, I'm gonna rob these people, but I'm
Right.
gonna promote to the public we did justice by them. That is true. That is true. We all was ultimately fired on May 21st. We lost our pension. We just finished a 3-day grueling arbitration case with MARTA, and not to get into the details of the case, I can't even say I'm shocked at the behavior MARTA displayed at arbitration. It comes as no surprise to me anymore at what lengths that you will go to just oppress people. And and when you look at MARTA, it's mainly African American.
Yes.
As you see, we have a African American CEO, and for you to be in on this, and we already know that you didn't need to do it. The pressure is coming from the capital, right? It's coming from the capital to do it. At what point in your life, what point in your career, you say I'm going to take a stand and stand with the people? At what point do somebody say that? Then when people do take to the street, we're radicals. But we don't have to be radicals when we talk like civilized people. I mean, history shows when we do act like radicals, we actually get what we want.
Yes.
And the point is that just in similar to the Clayton situation, where the community and the union come together, progress can be made. And when the disability community and the union approached MARTA management to make progress on how to improve mobility, we were rejected because of the agenda that Stanley's talking about that was driving this thing to send it off in a private direction.
Well, if I may, let me be very clear about this. This service is no better since May 21st than it was on May 19th. One of the things they try to say, well, they're just starting up, and they try to compare numbers from last July to this July. And what I want to remind people, don't be fooled by those numbers. Well, the numbers that we can't substantiate, I mean, anybody can put those numbers there, but we can't substantiate. It says they're operating at 86% this year, which you're supposed to be operating at 100% anyway. But you're operating at 86% this year, where last year you're alleging you was operating 84%, 84.5%. Well, one of those things, MV is capable of hiring a whole bunch of people at $11.50,
Right.
rather hiring people at livable wages. So you got more staff this year at a lower rate. You got 375, close to 400 operators on these buses, not knowing what they're doing because they're being poorly trained, versus well-trained operators at 309. Your numbers, that's just throwing buses out there. Hopefully
Yes.
we get there.
And can you explain how the arbitration, what that word means and what might happen?
It was a grievance brought on by the union. We believe that that's our work. It's clear as day is our work. We believe MARTA didn't have the right to outsource, and so we filed a grievance. And the MARTA Act could give us that right, and other protections give us that right to file a grievance, and we go through a process of arbitration. MARTA did drop the timeline twice, and the remedy in our contract does tell you if you drop the timeline, the remedy you ask for shall be granted. But of course, something to this magnitude, I don't think they're going to be that upfront. We messed up, grant the remedy. So we went through the arbitration process. We had our arbitration date on the 8th, 9th, and 10th. So I wouldn't wish those 3 days on nobody, but it was well worth it because, I'm hoping for a great outcome. I'm really hoping for a great outcome for the people I represent and myself as well, because I'm a paratransit operator, but I'm not subjected to a lot of the things that the new people are subjected to. I actually do get the same health insurance that I was afforded under MARTA, only because we did our due diligence and we found the documents where they bid it on the contract and said, well, the incumbent employees, the people that currently work for MARTA, we would keep their insurance until we'll keep their insurance. But the first thing they tried to do is have us negotiate negotiate away our insurance
Yeah.
and raise it up high, but we caught it, and now they have to pay COBRA, which is costing them a lot of money. And so we got that. I'm currently at my last pay rate with MARTA, and if we win, there's a lot of money that have to be returned back to the operators, and a lot of money that has to be possibly returned to all the new hires, because we believe that their wages is supposed to be at the minimum standard of $13. To my friends in the studio, it's not 15, but ultimately they will get there.
Okay,
But
so
also-
yeah, go ahead, Richie.
But also it's worth noting as well too, that in that arbitration ruling, it's worth noting that that decision is binding. Okay, and so they have to honor it, and so there's no wiggle room in there for them. So.
Could we go back to the positive again in terms of, we hope this turns out positive.
It will.
A meeting a few weeks ago, Reggie, that Dawn and Diane and we were all at together, a lot of the people in this room, trying to connect the dots between Black Lives Matter and labor. Could you say a little bit about what that means to you?
As much, the thing for me is that there's, and I was speaking about it earlier outside. There's a much deeper cancer here than we see as it relates to this situation, because you have to go back to the unemployment situation out here. You have to go back and look at what is transpired in the schools out here, and all of it is more or less a systemic cancer, and we have to look at it as such. But I guess the key element here is education, and us getting out there and actually dealing with this judicial process out here, and that is, to me, that is what changes it, because that is where the root of our problem is. We need to get out and re-educate. We need to get out here and reach the youth, communicate with this youth, and talk about these issues. You can't heal an ill if you don't know what the problem is. Okay, and so until we can start doing that, and we spend a lot of time out here registering the vote, but we need to also be as equally diligent and get these folks to the polls too. Okay, to actually cast those ballots, cast those folks. So for me, it's systemic in such to where there are so many layers. There's so many layers that are wrong with it. But I also say this too. In the unions, all unions have their own agendas as such, and we're different crafts, and we have different interests. Okay, but if we can rally together to protect the interests of our local, then certainly why can't we do that for our communities?
Absolutely.
See?
Yes.
So, and I think that's important. Now, when you can sit around and you can have a bunch of rhetoric, okay, and that's that's fine. But what type of resources are you willing to put into to tie into that rhetoric as it relates to your communities? So it's a lot, and it's ongoing, and we had. Just let's be real, okay? Not everybody feels the same way about Black Lives Matter.
Right.
Okay? You had a governor in Arkansas who said that the nation is taking this is being blown out of proportion. Okay? When in fact that more whites are killed by police a year than blacks. Well, there's some truth to that number, okay? There is. Last year you were talking about maybe 760 whites, 832 blacks. But let's look at the geographics. Let's look at the population. Okay. Now, if you look at it, there are 160 million more whites in America than there are black. Okay. Whites represent 62% of America. Okay. Now, blacks represent 13%. If you have 50 unarmed killings here and 50 here, well, that disparity just don't
Yes.
match up to me. And now let's even go further than that. let's look at as far as the black male. Now we're talking about only 6%.
Yes.
Okay. So now we're looking at all these disparities, and you say, well, this, you know, the numbers, we have equal amount of numbers in shootings, but we don't have equal numbers in justice there.
Yes. Thank
Okay,
you.
so it's not representative. The numbers are not representative of the events. Now, we need to educate, and we need to be especially diligent in communicating with our youth. We need to have these conversations about even when they're going out in the evenings or when they're going out at night. There's another Giuliano who said, well, we need to teach those kids how to respect the police officers. Well, we need to, you know, these kids have space that needs to be respected as well. But those conversations need to be had with the kids, and also the unions, that we need to start looking at how this could affect us. There's a lot to go into it. There's a lot of work that goes into it, but you have to have those conversations.
Yes.
You really do.
But I think ultimately people got to realize it can be done in the greater good that will come from success of it. I do think when it comes to labor and Black Lives Matter, I think the overall goal is equality, whether it's in the workplace or whether it's in the daily living of each other. Everybody wants equality, and if I'm not getting it from the CEO and I'm not getting it from the man that's sworn to protect, then something has to happen. You know, whether it's we start to hit you where we get your attention at, and that's in that wallet, and people start to act right when their bottom line is affected.
Exactly. And I'm glad that you all brought that up, because that leads right into what I was getting ready to announce, and the announcements that are going on this week, right now, this week at the courthouse. Different orgs, several different orgs will be at DeKalb County Courthouse. Robert Olson, who was the former DeKalb police officer that shot and killed veteran Anthony Hill, their lawyers have gone to court to ask that all charges be dropped against this officer. And if you remember, Anthony Hill was a veteran. He served 2 tours in Afghanistan and Iraq. He served in the Air Force. He came back home. He served his country. He came back home and he was shot and killed. He was naked. He was unarmed. He suffered from PTSD. And he was murdered. He was murdered outside of his apartment complex. And so this week, several different orgs are going to be there to put pressure on the courts to say this case cannot be dropped. Today, Black Lives Matter, a Revolutionary Moms Club, I believe Nikki Purple, the community activist, was out there. And tomorrow, there will be other orgs out there, ongoing throughout the week. So every day from 11 to 2 p.m., 11 a.m. to 2 p.m., remember that. These different orgs will be out there to speak about the case and not let Robert Olson get off. So I just wanted to.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you, Reggie and Stanley. Our union this month is celebrating its 100th anniversary. And I think what you two brothers have outlined today points the way forward to the next 100 years in terms of a union that fights for equality in the workplace and in the community across the board. And the example that you two brothers have given in Clayton County and in the fight in mobility for the rights of the disability community are such perfect examples of the kind of labor movement we need to have in this city and in this country. So thank you very much for tuning in today, and join us next Monday for the Labor Forum.